Welcome to the Muscle Expert Podcast with Ben Pakulski, one of the world's top professional bodybuilders, an expert on human performance and mindset mastery. Ben dives deep to deliver the strategies of the top experts to upgrade your body, mind, muscle, strength, performance, biochemistry, and how to become the upgraded modern man. Join us on benpakulski.com to learn the cutting-edge techniques to take control of your body, your brain, and create your greatest life.
Welcome to another episode of the Muscle Expert Podcast. I am your host, Ben Pakulski. My mission in life is to empower you with the knowledge and skill set to live your greatest life in your greatest body. And today I sit down with two of our best guests, our most listened to guests from the past, Dr. Jordan Shallow and Alex Viada. These are guys who have become great friends of mine, and we get into a really intimate personal discussion about the process. So Alex is somebody who has now set out a goal to do a double Ironman. The three of us are going to be climbing Mount Kilimanjaro in August, just as a new venture and a new challenge into our life. And these gentlemen are so process-oriented and going beyond what human beings think they're capable of. So we really get into the weeds about how we're going to approach these massive endeavors we're all under. Jordan is a world-class powerlifter who's going to make a shift into climbing a mountain. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about all of the intricacies that going into being a great human being. Not just good at something, but absolutely world-class. I know a lot of you don't necessarily have the goal to be world-class, but there's something to be learned when you sit down and discuss becoming world-class with gentlemen of this caliber. And you guys are going to get so much value from these guys. These are two guys that I hold really, really close to me as being two of the most brilliant guys I've ever come across. So I hope you really enjoy this podcast and this discussion with Dr. Jordan Shallow and Alex Viada. And as always, guys, I want you to live your greatest life, and I want you to share this mission of living your greatest life in your greatest body with someone you love and care about, because someone out there is going to love this episode just as much as I did. Have an awesome day and enjoy the show. Hey guys, I interrupt this podcast to let you know about a special appearance coming up on April 6th and 7th in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm going to be appearing at FitCon, appearing twice, once on Friday, once on Saturday. I hope to see every one of you there. I'm an open book. You guys can ask absolutely anything you want. I'm going to be doing a couple of very specific talks about the art and science of muscle building and really how to hack your life to live it in your greatest body. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode, and I look forward to seeing every one of you in Salt Lake City, April 6th and 7th at the Salt Lake City Palace. Enjoy. So today's primary topic is going to be the mindset of success and how we can really harness that mindset of pushing human performance well beyond what we've ever done before. So I want Alex to start talking because he's doing something that's absolutely ridiculous in September, and getting into the mindset of what the hell would possess someone to do a double Ironman triathlon.
You know, it's funny because, you know, like anything else, once you decide to take on a challenge like that, all you start to see once you immerse yourself in that world, you see people who've done that and done things that are even more extreme and done even, you know, you see people
like James Lawrence doing
50 Ironmans in 50 days in 50 states.
Where he was a guest. And dude, the mentality is like you said, and it's the best. It's just like, well, I had an end result and I set the end result well beyond what I thought I would ever be able to accomplish.
Yep.
And all I did was take one step at a time.
Exactly. And that, you know, and that, I mean, basically you just hit the punchline right there. It's, you know, it's the process. It's not thinking about.
All right, podcast is over.
Yeah, we're done.
It's the it's the process. It's the truth though. That's why I think it's everybody needs. I need to stop there and make it. No.
It really is. It's because you're not when you undertake it. I'm not thinking, okay, the 6 months of training it's going to take to get me to that point. I'm not thinking about, you know, when you start out, when you first jump in the water and you got 5 miles ahead of you to swim. You're not thinking about the 250 miles to bike after that. You're not thinking about the 50 miles you have to run after that.
Why would you?
You can't.
Yeah.
Why would you? All that you can control is the next couple moments, and then all you can do then is prepare for every possible contingency. But you focus on what you control. And I think the training for things like that, I don't want to sound like too, you know, woo spacey here, but it's so cleansing in a way because you have to think about that immediate focus in front of you. You have to think, okay, here's what I'm doing today to improve. Here's my plan. Here's my objective. And it's so focusing on that moment. And being able to break something that sounds so intimidating into something so manageable, it's its own kind of reward. It's its own kind of mental mantra that you go through every day. Every time, whether it's you go in the gym or whether you go into the pool or you go out in the ocean or you get on your bike, it's that everyday steady improvement, achievable objectives, and everything else is just incremental achievement beyond what you thought you could do the day before. Yeah. And that is the process. It's not crazy. Because, behind anybody who does anything that seems crazy is somebody who is very, very logical, taking on something that is ambitious, but they know is attainable. And I think that's always been the biggest thing for me in mindset, is letting people know that things are not crazy. Anything is attainable. Anything is doable. You just have to know what it is you need to do next to get from here to there.
What are the variables that are most likely to break first?
Exactly.
And that leads us into the conversation that Jordan brought up, and I'd like to talk about that, is the chronology of, I don't know exactly how you state it, the chronology of progression, basically, right? Is like, when someone like Alex sets out to do these ultramarathon, or someone like yourself sets out to break a world record, there needs to be a logical chronology of, how I'm going to do this, how I'm going to inch this forward day by day by day, and take one step each day, in a logical, intelligent way that prevents me from ever having a setback.
I think you kind of let us off with the word smash, and I think you were speaking more to like a general population. And then Alex reeled us in and talked about contingency planning and like doomsday predictions and kind of like where could this go wrong.
Yeah.
And I think and when he said that, he was speaking to us. When you said smash, I think you were speaking more to a broader audience, because the smash mentality is very narrow-minded, and it's almost like you have blinders on, and where you think like the hard work and just the grit and the aggression and the ability to overcome physically is going to be what gets you to where you inevitably want to go.
And we've all been there.
Oh, sure.
And we all have all realized, like, man, that's really dumb. Don't do that anymore.
But everyone knowledge really fast.
Right, but everyone else out there is sitting there going, I hashtag killed it today, man.
Yeah.
But we've all transcended that, and we all realize, like, that's it's a learning experience.
Yeah.
But no, that's really stupid. Don't do that. What's the process?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's all about like knowing where that's going to break down, right? Like where that system's going to break, depending on the pressure of the stimulus you're running through that system. So I'm a lot, maybe not concerned in a different way than Alex would be to get to his goals or yours to achieve your goals, where it's like you just need to reverse engineer from that endpoint, right? Like set that goal as far out and as obscene, as absurd as you can. And then from there, you can reverse engineer to where things are going to go wrong. So when we kind of touched on like the chronology of adaptation, like the timeline in which these systems that you're stressing are going to be called upon, and then if they're inadequately prepared, what system's going to come next? So it's like it's an algorithm. It's if this, then that. So it's like if you don't have the requisite stability neurological, then you won't build on a strong base of strength, and then you'll limit the ability to appreciate strength by appreciating muscle cross-sectional area, and then that muscle, if trained improperly, the tendons won't have the resiliency, the ligaments won't have the resiliency, and if they don't have that bridge between function and structure to stabilize the skeleton, regardless if it's 10,000 steps or 50 miles in the pool or in the ocean, or if it's one squat that's really heavy, if you haven't made those adaptations that bridge into structure, then we're looking at structural deformation. Then we start looking at bone spurs and breaks and disc herniation. So it's like checking all your boxes and kind of dotting your I's and crossing your T's as you approach whatever endeavor, but reverse engineer from the worst possible scenario. Like almost take a stoic philosophy in your training, where it's like, where is this when it's going to go really bad? And then, I mean, for strength, it's very quantifiable. It's very easy because the variables are not the variables are very much calculated for you, where it's like, you're a root out of the ground away from being like done, right? Like you're a kick in the head or a bike crash away, where it's the general fitness population maybe not pursue those goals, but it can still learn from you taking it out from that extreme, where it's like, if your goal is just general fitness or strength or hypertrophy in an air conditioned room, it's like we can take a sophisticated enough approach if we've taken the subject to the end degree where we can see.
And it's funny how many fields that goes into, because if you look at things like car racing, people test things on race cars that they then apply to everyday cars. You look at something, any sort of hugely ambitious feat, like we just had the SpaceX launch of the heavy rocket lift, something that looks so completely ambitious and extravagant and dangerous and risky and everything else is the most methodical, precise, every contingency accounted for, every step followed. And that's, if this is what you do with, these crazy world-class endeavors, you need to follow that same process. Like, you learn from that. I mean, and the crazier the end goal, the more methodical you have to be.
Yeah.
And the more you think about the proper steps to do things in, building the foundation. And, something we talked about a lot is kind of earning the right, to go to that next step, earning the right to put on load, earning the right to add miles, earning the right to, anything along the way. I mean,
and it's those steps along the way that make the difference too, right? Because it's like, being like in clinical practice as a chiropractor, the injuries I see are never a good story. It's never, someone did not do the diligence or wasn't mindful in the process that led to, it's a warm-up set. It's I pick my kids up off the floor and then I blew out my back. Where it's like, if you're going to strive to push the upper limits, you need to be cognizant and cerebral 24/7 because you'll get beat by someone who's not. So like, if that rocket build, could you imagine, like, that's the biggest thing to ever go into a space by a species that just figured out fixed wing flight like just over 100 years ago.
Right.
So it's like they got to be so cerebral and every part that goes into that.
Yeah.
One screw. What was the one? Was it that blew up going out of orbit?
The Challenger?
Yeah. It was like that's a screw out of place.
Yeah.
That's a rep out of place.
It was
that's
an O-ring. It was exactly. That's all
exactly.
it was.
And so it's like when you run pressure through a system like that, it's like you got to make sure that that mindfulness isn't something that's just present when the rubber hits the road. Like when you're doing that max effort, I rarely see, rarely is understand. Really might not be the right word, but less people get hurt in competition because when you have the most weight on your back or most weight in your hands, that's when you're the most present and in the room. And if there's a slip up because there's been numerous slip ups in the sub-maximal weights, and kind of speaking from powerlifting, that have led up to that launch, that pinnacle moment. So I think if end performance is the end goal, it's the process, it's the steps along the way that you have to be mindful of.
Yeah, one of the awesome things we said, we were talking in the car on the way over to lunch, was everyone looks at elite athletes in any sport and they just assume, that was a gift. They don't see every incremental contingency plan, every incremental step that's been adhered to, everything that they've done from baby steps of like, how am I going to progress toward being Usain Bolt, being the fastest runner in the world? Is he gifted? Of course, at some level he's gifted, but you don't just get to being the fastest guy in the world because you're gifted. There's millions of people out there that are very gifted in powerlifting. There's millions of guys out there who are gifted in bodybuilding, don't get anywhere because they're not taking those incremental steps. We've all seen the amazing career that came to an end because of the injury, or that one injury, or whatever it was, that one misstep. And I think that's a huge thing for people to start to acknowledge, is it's not about you being you were born to be a powerlifter, or you're born to be an ultramarathon. That's not, you're born for that. You've taken, you've set a massive goal because you had this very clear vision, and then you said, I'm going to take every incremental step, and I'm going to work harder than everybody, but I'm also going to work smarter than everybody.
And that's what I think people don't see enough of. And I remember once I just put out a little contest saying, show me the boring pictures from your training. Because when you see an athlete break a record, when you see them finish an event, when you see them hit a max, when you see the screaming, the exultation, the celebration,
right.
You see the representations, you see the highlight reel, but and it's easy to think that these top level athletes are people who do anything extreme, that you think of them as kind of wild or screw loose, or I could never have that level of intensity. But behind that is every bit of precision and lead up. And the training, even though the representation, the outward representation looks crazy, the mentality behind it, the build up to it, is very, very methodical. I mean, it is in its own way an extremely cerebral activity if done right.
Yeah.
The longest careers, that's how they go. And when people are younger, I think there's always a certain element of let's just go out and go hard 100% of the time. But that can't last.
I always say one of my statements is always like, before you're 30, you train with your balls.
Yeah.
After you're 30, you train with your brains.
Yeah.
And not to.
I'm 27. I'm the one hooked up to the machine.
You've accelerated a little bit.
I just think one of my favorite quotes is have clarity of vision, but flexibility in process.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, especially, in the fitness industry, if that's your goal, I can only speak to that because I don't pursue business with such a passion, or really anything with such a passion. But it's like, I think you can get indoctrinated and for a number of reasons, and then that process becomes linear and there's no flexibility in the process. And then you can lose sight of the vision because you'll end up in a point where you're just trying to smash things. You're just trying to mentally overcome with, the hashtag no days off or whatever your driver is. And it's like to be able to take a step back and identify what your rate limiters are going to be and understand that it's not going to be like a linear progression.
And you've emotionally attached to the process. And that's what everyone does so wrong in our world. It's like I'm emotionally attached to be a vegan or keto, or like I do linear progression, or I do box method, or I do, an undulating periodization. Well, why? And is that the right solution for you right now in time and space, right? Yeah. Like, does it perfectly lend to your goals, or is there something you could do a little bit better to get you there with less obstacles?
Yeah, and there's the thing. It's like, and this is an adaptation that people have a hard time making within themselves, where it's like the obvious is the what works for you won't work for me, but
you could be at a completely different place, right?
Exactly. But what works for you might not work for you as you progress. You adapt to the stimulus over time, so you need to change that environment to keep progressing.
So that brings us to a really perfect segue into how do I know what's next? You guys are some of the best coaches on the planet, right? So, I'm objectively training really hard. I'm challenging this particular system. In your case, you're now getting ready for a powerlifting show, powerlifting meet.
I was going to say show, such a bodybuilder.
Yeah, bodybuilder. But you're getting ready. You're 5 weeks out, and how do I objectively assess what's going to be the next thing to break?
Well, I think, we spoke a bit about this a little earlier during lunch. It's like we kind of spoke on science and how science should guide our decisions, and research-based and evidence-based, but also the intrinsic biases that exist within that community. Yeah. But I think the thing we can learn from science is the method, right? Turn yourself into the experiment, have objective outcomes, have a method, have a structure, have a hypothesis, founded in something, but control your own variables, and then have objective measures. And for me, it's all about dynamic correspondence. It's like, what are my interventions going to be along the way? What are the pieces that are going to comprise this end result? And how do I measure their progress? And not only that, it's like, how does that progress that I'm measuring carry over to progress in my main goal? It's like, I could worry about like my 40-yard dash, and I could get faster in my 40-yard dash, but if my squat doesn't go up, then it's like, if there's no correspondence to my objective outcome, then it's like, if I test and reassess and there's no progress.
It's like doing an hour of cardio because you think you need to do an hour of cardio when you're getting ready for a bodybuilding show, right? Like, I want to lose fat. Well, why do you want to do an hour of cardio then? I thought you just want, like, people are just attached to this is what I believe it needs to semantically look like to move the needle on whatever that objective is.
Yeah, so for me, it's just assessment based.
Yeah, and and the other thing was, you talk about being wed to a process or committed to a process. You shouldn't commit to a process. You should commit to commitment to a process.
There you go. No matter what happens, I'm going to see
this through, because that's the only way you're going to get your data.
Yeah.
And you're only going to get your data if you actually commit to committing to it. Because if you half-ass your way through something you don't think is going to work, or you don't think you're wed to it, you're not going to see through to the end. Your data is going to be terrible.
Yeah.
And so it's really being honest with your level of drive and level of commitment. You say, I'm going to try something, whether or not it's the best thing, you're not going to know if it's the best thing unless you give it its fair shake. And that's kind of one of the biggest things we see when we get people who get like any kind of training ADD, because our whole thing is working with any kind of concurrent training. You're very often training people at things they're bad at, and it would be very, very easy to discount any kind of initial commitment to a process because people are trying something they're bad at. They're trying something they don't like. It's outside their comfort zone. They may have hesitancy about it. If they're a powerlifter, they may have hesitancy about trying cardio. Yeah. They may not be tracking their data correctly. They may be skipping workouts and things like that. And that data is useless. They haven't learned anything from it.
Right.
We say, look, if you commit to it, even if it's bad, even if the data tells you this is not a good solution, it's data. That's something we didn't have before, and that's how you learn.
And that's something too that fogs the initial starting point for a lot of people's processes is publication bias.
Yes.
People won't put out research that produces a negative result. It's like, that's information.
Yeah.
Knowing what, like, and psychologically knowing what you don't like is equally as important as knowing what you like or want to do or want to pursue. But knowing what doesn't work for you or doesn't work for you at this time, equally as beneficial. Yeah. Because if you understand principles and you've been taught rather than adhere to preachers that will give you dogma, then you can make your own adaptations, and then you can use that. And okay, if this really didn't work, let's try something drastically different than this, and maybe that really will work. So I just think the biases and the dogma are something that lead people astray from the get-go. And like you said, if you don't commit to commit, it's you don't have a data point to start with.
So as two of the best coaches in your respective industries, what do you personally look for when you're assessing your own progress, when you're assessing your own ability to take the next step in whatever direction you're trying to go? So like what I'm looking for is, people don't have your skill set. They don't have your knowledge base. So they don't know how to proprioceptively take inventory of, hey, this is how I feel. I feel like my cardio is lacking, or I feel like my gait may be breaking, or I feel like I may have this instability in my hip. What are some of the cues that you're looking for in yourself and your clients that give you an indication of what the next bottleneck is?
You want to take that one?
Oh man, I was just hoping.
I think for me, like for myself, as far as training for myself, it's understanding that initial piece, like that grit and the aggression is not going to be like, at the end of the day, sure, we all compete in sports that test ourselves, but we show up on race day like anyone else. Like I wouldn't compete if my only concern was if I wanted to get stronger. It's like I compete in a sport. I want to win. This sport exists on a platform, and that platform is not a social media platform. I got to show up the day of.
It's not just about a PR on social media today.
Exactly. And it's just like, and you know what, for some people, if that's your motivating factor, fine. But like for us that have stepped on stage or have crossed finish lines, it's like the cerebral approach sometimes means that less is more. That, in the next, I'm hooked up like a mental patient right now. So it's like in the next 5 weeks, I look to appreciate the ability to express my strength better by recovering from damage obviously done, rather than, you got to go and keep kind of the nose to the grindstone. And then when I get to the platform and we know better off, I'll have a couple more likes and a couple more bruises maybe, but it's like, that's not what you play for. So for me, it's just, it's knowing when to take a step back can be like the most crucial step in actually making progress.
I think it's important to acknowledge one of the things you said there was, on game day, on show day, on whatever lift day, you're going to be at your best because you're going to do everything in your power to get mentally psyched up for that. Yeah. So you don't need to train for that. You don't need to train that state. What you need to train is working hard when you feel crappy, when you feel less than your best, and I loved what you did today. Because Jordan probably got 3 or 4 hours of sleep last night. He's at 3 hours of sleep. Didn't eat all that much. He's on a low calorie diet now. He came in here and still had an awesome heavy lift. And you're not really attached to the outcome. You're just like, I'm just going to give it all I've got. But more attached to making sure the process is right. This is what I need to do today. And regardless of what my nutrition state is, regardless of what my mindset is, regardless of how much sleep I've had, I'm still going to follow the steps that I need to take to be the best on that day.
Well, I think you guys can all attest to this. Like, to me, psychology trumps physiology every day.
1,000%.
Right? So it's
that's where I was going to go with that.
You got to have your ducks in a row for that psychology to manifest itself in a vessel that's prepared for the demand that you're going to put it under, right? You can't just, get really mad, hit the nose torque and the chalk bowl, run out there and pull 100 more pounds. It's like, you need to do this.
Snort some ammonia and get after it, man.
Yeah, that's it, man. Just grip and rip. Just get it pulling. So it's like, for me, it's the confidence and the psychology comes from knowing that I've done all I could within the parameters that I had to prepare my physiology for when that current goes through and I flick that switch on game day, where it's like, all three of us are ready to go out on the shield. Like, we're ready to go. Like, if at a moment's notice, the last thing I worry about is tearing something.
Yeah.
It's part of it. It's whatever. And I think if you pursue something, like, if you love it, let it kill you. And that's like the end goal. And if you want to pursue something to the highest level, that's what you're up against. Because that's what I do, and I still get my ass kicked.
Alex, where did that attitude come from? If you love it, let it kill you. Like Jordan said that. But Alex, we all have an attitude of, at some point in our lives, or for you guys still, for me, no longer, but at some point it was like, no matter what, I'm going to be the greatest, or I'm going to be of the greatest. And you guys are living that life now. Where does that come from?
It's funny because, I've actually struggled with that question a lot, because it's easy to think of it as a very egotistical sort of thing. You see, it's very narcissistic. I just want to be the best. But in a lot of cases,
your best, perhaps.
My best.
Yeah.
And it's not, but you're not looking for acclaim. I mean, I think a lot of us, for the majority of what we do, is a very internal sort of sport, and it's not like powerlifting is ever going to bring you great fame and fortune. Most of these things, I think, as much as I hate to say it, it's such a. When I went down that path, it was almost more a translation. It was a tangible way, because for me, that whole self-improvement, the whole idea of finding things that I'm weak at, finding things that I'm not the best at, and engaging in that sort of mental and physical, the mental and physical rubrics that I need to actually improve.
So, but you have to acknowledge that's not normal. It's not normal. Like, it's normal for you. It's normal for you. It's normal for me. Like, I really suck at this, therefore I must. I can't, therefore I must. But that's not normal for most people. Most people avoid what they suck at. So where did that come from?
That came from absolutely being extraordinarily mediocre at so many things for such a long period of time. And having some of my teachers back when I was in 5th grade tell my parents, "Oh, he's got great potential." That is one of the most, damning knife through the heart things after a while, when you just keep getting told, "Oh, he's got great potential." Because really what that's saying is you could be so much better than you are.
You're not cutting it.
Yeah, and and just basically going out there and saying, everyone thinks I should be bad at that.
Right.
So I'm not going to be bad at that. I'm going to be passable at that. And then saying, okay, I'm passable at that. I'm going to be good at that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm good at that. What's it going to take to make me the best at that? It becomes a habit. And, I think so many people talk about sports and athletics, and they say, oh, it's character building and confidence. It's only character building and confidence building if you do it for the right reasons. And I think that's one of the right reasons, is saying, I want to know what area to put myself, what mental state to put myself in, where I can go from being bad at something to being good at something to being great to being the best I can possibly be, because it all kind of comes from the same place, and it's habit. It goes beyond sport. It goes to almost everything else that you take on, or it should. I mean, and you take it too far, it leads to obsession, and it can lead to bad obsession. But that's why I think going back, having that process is so critical, because oh God, we were having that conversation where we said sometimes taking a day off is discipline. Yeah. Going in and training isn't discipline. Taking a day off is discipline. And, having that balance, and actually then that's when you're kind of doing things for the right reason. That's when you finally kind of transcended that self-flagellation phase and are now actually learning, actually building, you're doing it for the right reasons. You're excelling for the right reasons. You're excelling for improvement's sake, not for like an ego-driven sake.
So what do you say to somebody who's sitting at home saying, well, I don't have that internal focus. I don't have that internal drive. Maybe I'm externally motivated a little bit. Like, I want people to give me the gratification and
that's bullshit. You're sitting there listening to this podcast.
Right.
You're interested in this field. You've already crossed some of those. You're getting in the gym at all. You've already done more than a lot of people. You already have that drive for self-improvement.
But people, I don't want to work hard.
But they're selling themselves short. They're already asking the questions.
That's your brain, man. Like, I would argue that 80% of the population has no desire to challenge themselves. Like, I could be wrong. Maybe my demographic is different.
I think we spoke a bit about genetics earlier. I think genetics aren't, he's got a bicep peak that looks like this.
It's a psychology thing.
100%.
Yeah.
And it's like you said,
Dopamine,
80%
man.
of people. And I think maybe that distribution is misrepresented by people who just haven't looked to pursue a passion. Because like we talked about earlier, the idea of discipline doesn't exist. It's a balance of things you love to do. Like if you love the process of running, if you love the process of training, it's not discipline to come into the gym. So it's like, half of it could be, I think a large part of it is that distribution is that's where the genetics play a factor. Is because if you can fan the flame.
And then there's upbringing, just people don't feel like they deserve it. And that man is so much more common than you think. Like,
I still think people have it in them more than they realize.
Of course they do.
But they
don't feel like they deserve it.
You look at some of these video games. You look at a game like Minecraft or any one of these RPGs. You'll have people sit there for 50 hours cumulative, sitting there like mining resources. Got to be the most mind-numbing, boring, ungratifying thing they could possibly do for a long-term goal. They are sitting there literally pressing a button over and over again for a long-term, even intangible goal. That mentality is already there. It's misdirected.
It's because it's so simple. Like, it's like Tetris. How did Tetris ever become popular? It's like
that's
soccer.
Like,
not only it's soccer, but it's such an easy sport that a 3-year-old could do it. Yeah. And that's why it's so popular, because so many people, there's no tactic. Maybe in pros there's tactic, but like it's like ball, kick, go. Like Tetris. Like put these blocks in this space. Like the more simple, the more
people get better at it. And they get to the point where it's no longer simple. I'm not saying that you can make an easy line from here to there. I'm saying that fundamental human that potential is there. Yeah, it's got to be cultivated. It's got to be. You've got to say, people need to stop selling themselves short, saying, "Oh, I can't do that." You say, "Look, you've got that nugget there. You've got the seed of it."
So I don't know how you grew up, but a lot of people grew up with parents that said, "You're not capable. Why are you even trying? You don't deserve it. You're not able." That just becomes their only inner dialogue. So the conversation to be have here is like, you got to change your inner dialogue. We know that. We know that. Like, dude, if I went and did an ultra marathon, I wouldn't have the capacity to have the dialogue with myself to get through it because I've never taken the incremental steps to get there. This is all tying back around, right? The incremental steps toward getting you toward where you don't want to go is a day by day, one foot in front of the other. I'm going to get a little more uncomfortable today than I was yesterday. And then I can learn to have that dialogue. And which is why we talk about like why we have such a great connection between the three of us is because we've each pushed ourselves psychologically and physically to that level of like, I'm having that dialogue with myself like, oh my God, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do it anyways. And then eventually you're like, hell yeah, I can do that. I can do anything. And that's an earned trait. That's not something that people just get sitting on the couch going, oh, but it has to be like one day incrementally in front of the other. And you have to expose yourself to the challenge. The challenge is the way, the obstacle is the way, right? And that's always the mentality people
I just think psychologically it's a lot harder to program and systematize that progress and that success, where it's like in the gym, it's very tangible. The objective progress is measurable with weights or time or distance or whatever, where it's like there's less roadmaps out there for to draw a parallel psychologically weak to strengthen yourself. You're not going to have this complete overhaul every day where you're just going to like cold turkey and then, set up better systems and find your career path and do all that in one day. Right. And I just think because there's not a objective or as objective of an outcome that breaks that process up into small steps that makes overcoming and achieving and striving a cyclical rewarding process, that's where people don't know where to start. It's like, if the gym didn't have like weights or numbers or anything and you just came in and you lifted arbitrarily, that's almost what I think is people's barrier to entry of pursuing betterment in the psychological field or the arena, because it's like
measure progressive overload.
Which is a meathead way to look at it, but I think that's true. It's like they just feel like they're spinning their wheels, and that perpetuates kind of just a cycle of frustration.
Talk about your own experience, man. How did it start for you? Because like we can each of us talk about like, I know exactly the day that I decided I'm going to be a professional bodybuilder, and then how that journey started in my mind from the thing that happened when I was 6 years old to the thing that happened when I was 10 years old to like, what was your
powerlifting
learning?
is something that like, I mean, you both grew up playing hockey in Canada and that was it, and then you age out real quick, but it was a gradual process of just working its way in, and it was something that was kind of in front of me the whole time. It's like I wanted to get better, right? And I think it was competition. Like it was being put in soccer at 3 years old, and then like just hating to lose to the point where it's like I hated.
Now that's in your DNA.
I guess it has to be. And I think that's where the genetics plays the role, and you just have to find whatever your driver is. For me, it was internal. Some people are driven by the external to the point where that'll motivate them to the equal or more so point to push them past barriers that my internal drive won't push me. So it's like identifying.
I don't believe that. I think internal. I believe internal goes much further.
Yeah.
Because I mean, an internal pain is way deeper. Cuts way deeper than an external.
There's a powerlifter, Kirk Kowalski. He has a quote that says like, I'm going to butcher it, so I apologize, but it's I powerlift just to show the world how pissed off I really am.
Yeah, let's pull up so if I write in Kirk.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's it. And that's the thing. And you can see, and powerlifting is so, it's so visceral in its manifestation of whatever your motivator is. Like you can see guys on the platform that are like, whew, demons. Yeah. Like that's just like, I hate to, perpetuate like common social media sentiment, but like whatever he's doing, I'm glad it's powerlifting, because that guy has a lot more outlets for whatever is haunting him than lifting weights off the ground.
No, and I think that's why it's interesting to diversify your outlets a little bit. I mean, because I think back when I was just lifting heavy, I had a very specific way of dealing with frustration, and it worked fantastically for some things where I could just power through them and smash myself, as it were, rather than, and that would bring me calm. But the now a different way of dealing with it, go out and run for 3 hours. Go out and mountain bike for 5 hours. It's a different mindset. It's a different way of fighting those kind of same sort of demons. It's sometimes finding the outlet is in and of itself a growth process.
Well, I think that too just comes with finding the passion, like that. The two coincide. But the thing that I think we all have in common is that, like, what if that got taken away from you? Like, what if at the peak of that
So I found it. Powerlifting is an external view of how pissed off I am at the world.
Yeah. And you see it. Like, you can see, like, the guys that are technical and tactical and mindful in their approach, and you can see the guys that are just like.
But I don't even know if it's pissed off or it's just some type of pain, right? Like, maybe at some level, like Alex said, maybe somebody said, you're just kind of not good enough yet.
Yeah.
You have so much potential.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. People, same idea. People said to me, hey, you'll never do that. You don't have the genetics to be a professional bodybuilder. Your legs are too small and your shoulders are too narrow. I heard it time and time again. And I'm like, okay.
Does that quantify as an external or internal motivator?
Well, it becomes internal, right? It starts as an external. It becomes like a feeling of inadequacy. And I'm like, no. Like, my inevitable response now ingrained in me is like, I'm going to throw up two middle fingers and I'm going to do it twice. It's not just like, I always go, and I talk about this a lot, is like doing it once isn't enough because it could be a fluke. And the only person that matters is you, right? Yeah. So I need to convince myself it wasn't a fluke. I'm going to do it twice.
Yeah.
Right.
First one's for me, second one's for you.
Yeah. Vice versa, maybe, right? Like whatever it is.
Whatever floats your boat.
For me, it's like once that pain cuts deep inside of you, it's there, man. Until you learn to deal with your own pains, they're always going to be there.
Yeah. But so I think dealing with it is just diversifying outlets, like you said.
Sure.
Like if someone cut you out, if someone Nancy Kerrigan you, in 2012, right, just left Pekulski's calves, son of a, and just got you with the lead pipe backstage, it'd be like that was your identity. Right? Like that was who you, and this is something we're seeing now across the board in all sports where it's like, football primarily where like that gets taken, like NFL stands for not for long. Like when that is the precipice and the only way to outlet that, the only way to outlet that in a constructive manner, whatever that the driver is, whether that is pain or whatever your motivation is, the second that gets taken away from you and you don't have a diversified outlet for that, something else you're passionate about, and that's your identity. Like that's there's no prosthetic for that. Like you can cuff it, elbow surgery, you can rehab, you can be fine. But like if you lose this, then it's a dangerous.
Alex, how do you get your clients motivated? So the reason I'm asking that question is like, how do you get somebody motivated to do this stuff that's boring? So like we do this stuff that's boring because we know it's part of the process. Yeah. But most people have to be very intrinsically motivated to want to go there. So how do you take that approach?
I mean, one of the things we do is, obviously since most of us come from a varied background, it's you understand their motivations, you speak their language. Mm-hmm. When I talk about running to a power lifter, it's not about running for its own sake. It's about undertaking this other endeavor here, which is boring as hell, is going to help you do more of what you love to do. And that's always been our focus, is saying that we understand you don't want to do this, but also we know you would rather do that over there.
Right.
The more you do this, the more of that you can do.
Right.
And I think that's with any sort of mental frustration, pushing past a stumbling block. It's so
like
you can
climbing
do more.
The mountain, right?
Exactly.
Like you gotta suffer the pain of climbing the mountain to enjoy the view.
Exactly.
Yeah, but you want to hear that from a guy that's seen the mountaintop. Yeah. And that's what I think we both deal in a subset of the industry that is not glamorous and it's not fun and it can be boring, but it sure as shit necessary if you want to be top of your game. Yep. So I think that's empathy is what Alex can perpetuate and get results with that style of training in people that otherwise wouldn't, because he's like, it's one thing for me to say this will benefit you because X, Y, and Z study, but when the rubber hits the road, no one gives a shit about the studies anyways.
Right.
Mm-hmm. You're looking at the study right here.
Yeah, exactly.
This is proof of concept. This is let me tell you what it's like and let me tell you how it's benefited me.
Well, dude, it's the same with me with teaching people intelligent muscle building, right? Like if I hadn't gone there, I wouldn't know what was necessary. Like I struggled so much to build muscle. Like people don't understand. They look at me now like, yeah, right, dude. I'm like, dude, I struggled so much to build muscle that I had to find a solution, because not finding a solution wasn't an option, right? I'm like, no matter what it takes, that's the end result. And I tried so many different approaches. And that's why now I feel so confident in my ability to tell anybody, like, yeah, I can probably help any human being build a tremendous amount of muscle. Just like you can help you could help me become an endurance athlete. You could help any human being become a world-class endurance athlete, because you've been through everything.
Did it the hard
way. Dude, you've been through everything.
How much does the genetics argument frustrate you when people throw that out? I mean, like, do you get, hey, I get to interview you for a second. Does it actually anger you, or do you just kind of feel like disappointed, or feel like, okay, here this comes again? When someone says it's only because of your genetics.
Well, so I think at first, people realized I didn't have good genetics. Like, it wasn't until the end of my career that I started getting people saying, oh, yeah, you've got good genetics. So at the beginning of the career, it was like, oh, your genetics suck. And I'm like, okay. So, you're never going to be a good bodybuilder. Even, like, after I'd begun competing, like, everyone's like, eh. And then all of a sudden, you start getting better. Oh, well, I guess your genetics are good, So it never really offended me, man, because in the beginning, it took me so long to overcome that argument of, like, oh, your genetics suck. Yeah. So I made that one of my drivers. Yeah. And then when people started saying, hey, your genetics, it's kind of like the conversation around, like, hey, you look like you take steroids, and you don't. You're like, thanks. Oh, good. That's awesome. So now when someone later says, oh, your genetics are great, I'm like, thanks. I appreciate that. I had to work for those genetics.
It took me 15 years to learn those genetics.
20 years, man.
Would reappropriate something else there.
Say that one more time.
Like, the people that would say that to you, like, oh, you don't have good genetics, would reappropriate some sort of other negative comment towards you. It would just be something else. Like, say you did have good genetics, it'd be like, well, you don't have good work ethic, or you don't have this, or you don't have that. It's like, there will always be that, and maybe it's necessary to have those people that are trying to claw you down from the get-go, because then that's going to be exclusion criteria of who's mentally tough enough out of the gate to overcome.
So it's funny, man, and I say that to myself a lot. And in 2010, I got 7th place at the New York Pro, and I put my life, like, literally, man, I took my balls out of my purse, put them on the chopping board, and I said, I'm giving my all for this show. And I crushed it, and I got crushed.
Yeah,
I got crushed. I got 7th place. It ripped my soul out, and it took me 2 weeks to be able to come to terms with the fact that, like, and actually look at the pictures and realize I look like shit, and I wasn't happy with myself. But one of the things that I looked at and said to myself was, "This is your opportunity. This is people testing you. Maybe it's the universe. Maybe it's the judges testing you and seeing, what are you made of? Are you a champion or are you a chump?" And I literally just went, okay, this is your opportunity to either make it crush you or let it fuel the rest of your journey. And again, it's that decision. That's always that conscious decision that you get to make on everything in your life. The one thing that you have is the ability to choose your perception. And that was, I think, one of the turning points in my life. One, it became the catalyst for me learning intelligent muscle building. Two, it was like, I smiled and I was like, motherfuckers, I'm a champion and I'm going to show you. And that's, it's always that decision. And that may be the easiest thing for people sitting at home to realize is every situation in life, no matter how shitty it seems at the time. Like, at the time, I literally was like, I'm never fucking competing again. The IFBB's full of shit. I don't deserve this outside of myself, external. And then I took time to step back and look at the pictures, and I was like, oh, I look like shit. And I was able to objectively say that to myself. So now I can start to internalize it, right? Because now I made the decision to say, no, you can control this and you can use this as your driver, rather than crushing you. So, man, good.
It's that next step mentality. It's, I think that's why, looping back to something totally different, I think that's why, like, ultra running is a fun example of it. You can't control the weather. You can't control the climate. You can't control the terrain. You can't control this. You can't control that. You can't control. All you can control is that very next step. You can control that next step, and you can control how you react to whatever gets thrown at you. That's it. That's the only difference right there. It's how you react to whatever comes in and whatever tries to beat you down, and it's what you do with that next step. That's it. That's the essence of your control, because you know where you want to go, but you can't worry about the whole path there. You can't let it daunt you. You can't wonder why you're not there. You can't wonder why you're not in first.
Right.
Because the person in first isn't always winning. The person who's winning is the person who's taking that next step, who's reacting the best to everything that comes in at them, and doing what needs to be done to actually finally finish ahead.
So, in your opinion, Jordan, what separates good from great?
In Powerlifting or just across the board?
You can take it however you want to take it.
I mean, I think it's perception. I think it's the ability to take that clarity of vision and keep that paramount to the process, whatever you think it is. Like, have the ability to kind of overcome and disconnect yourself emotionally from the process if you're emotionally connected to the end goal.
Right.
So I think that's the attrition standpoint. Like, that's the last man standing kind of mentality. I mean, powerlifting it's such a collection because it's not. I mean, we all come from fringe sports, right? It has to be internal motivation because there's no external motivation. I mean, bodybuilding maybe more so like a notoriety standpoint would be an external motivator greater than that of ultra marathon running or powerlifting. But even then, it's one of my favorite quotes on this is yours. No one cares. No one cares. And it's when the gym's dark and you've flown 3 hours
and everyone thinks everyone cares, but nobody cares.
No one cares. And the second you can wrap your head around that and you still, you run up and down hills or still diet and kill yourself doing cardio or whatever, still try and lift when your knee's exploding 5 weeks before a meet. And the fact you realize no one cares and you still do it, that's the internal motivator.
Let me ask you another question. How important is failure?
Oh, I mean, it's the only way you'll learn. I mean, and if the sooner you can just understand that principle, is the sooner you're actually going to fail less and less. And then it becomes frustrating because as you begin to fail less and less, you feel stagnant in your progress. Because when you can associate that failure with overcoming and learning and getting stronger, then that's Pavlovian in concept.
Sure it is.
Where it's like you ring a bell and salivate. It's like, if I fail, then I'm going to overcome and be stronger.
How much does failure drive you?
Hugely. I mean, and that's really it. It's the story of finding things that you're bad at, because I mean, you learn so little from a win, from an all-out win.
Nothing.
I mean that you've learned one right way to do things. Teach me 100 wrong ways to do them, and find something you're weak. Analyze why you were weak there. Figure out, why did I do so badly? Why did this go wrong? What went wrong here? What went wrong in my mind? What went wrong in my body? Because any sort of test of any sort, or any sort of competition or anything else, it's a test. It's a test of your preparedness. It's a test of where you are right now. It is the most objective assessment of your progress. And failure is basically telling you, okay, we've pressure tested this and something is wrong. Here's the opportunity to tell you exactly where things went wrong. Because when you're working through a process and you're going through it and you have so little external feedback, you need that failure to show you where the gaps are, to actually pressure test, to fill the thing with air and see where it's leaking.
How have you learned to remove the emotional attachment to the failure and objectively look at it from a process perspective?
Do it a lot. Fail a lot. Fail often, hard, and heavy. Yeah. Just keep doing it. Throw yourself back in.
That's why we succeed, right? It's because we're such huge failures.
Well, and the thing is, I fail at something, or I miss a PR, or
I'll make it the next time.
I'm still pissed off.
Right.
I still rant and rave and scream, and I quit 1,000 times in my head, but 1,001 times I restart. Yep. And that's what it is. That's the difference. Is dealing well with failure. I don't say anyone here wants failure. We don't welcome it. We're like, I missed that lift. Yeah. Oh yeah, I tore my quad.
Sure.
But you want to paint the fringes, because just as neither of us wanted to fail, neither of us want to outright win. Right? Because there's nothing to learn. Because then what if you come across someone that's just at that level of competition? There's always
going to be someone better than you.
Yeah, and that's where it lies. Like, you could go to a local show next week. We could tan you up. You don't eat carbs for a day or whatever, and you freaking dust everyone. You haven't stepped on stage in however many years. But it's like, there'll be no gratification of that. There'll be no motivation. There'll be no reason to go.
Dude, even going to the gym now for me, I say this to people all the time. I'm like, man, the last show I trained for was the Mr. Olympia contest. You tell me how I'm going to get motivated to come in the gym. What am I training for? Through the last 20 years, I've been trained to be the biggest human being on the planet, and now I'm like, I still love it, but without that goal, that end result that you're striving for, you're kind of like, oh. People ask me all the time, what's your training look like now? I'm like, well, it's kind of like whatever I feel like doing that day. If it's fun, I did it. I deadlifted yesterday. I deadlifted today. I did hamstrings and quads yesterday. I did hamstrings and quads today.
But what's your passion now? Right? Because it's
feeling like the way great and improving my brain. I spent the last 20 years on my body.
And how do you pursue that? And how I've seen it, because every time we talk, it's the same thing. It's like, I have a notepad back at your place right now of 7 different books that you've mentioned since you picked me up from Tampa Airport at 7 o'clock last night. you're reappropriating your passion to
Sure.
something else. So it's like, you've talked this whole time like we're in the trenches and you're old yeller. I'm about to take
Hey, man,
you
it's
back.
my podcast. I can't be like, hey, man, look at me.
I can't let you put yourself down where it's like.
I don't put myself down.
Where it's like, I think from now you're just pursuing it in a different arena. It's
Sure,
just
yeah.
manifesting itself.
Yeah, I
in a
never meant to,
different way.
like, I do that a lot. Like, I don't mean to ever put myself down as something I'm doing anything significant, but like, I want to feature you guys. It's not you guys interviewing me.
But
So.
I think I think that actually drives home something else though, is talking about then, focusing on the business and improvement in education and everything else. Excellence is transferable. And I think that is one of the biggest take-home things that I always emphasize with everybody is failure, how you deal with failure is transferable skill. How you deal with setbacks is a transferable skill. How you deal with success is a transferable skill.
Yep.
When you get success, do you rest on your laurels, or do you still try to push your success to the point of failure where you can see a new place to
Well,
go?
I just think that transferable skill is just a representation of character, right? So it's like people know from a business standpoint, because they've seen you pursue something in a different arena, that if you're going to pursue it in business, they better look the hell out.
Yeah.
Like, BPAC's coming. So if you're in that competitive arena with you now, I would be extremely nervous, because I've seen how you compete in when you're passionate about something. And I think that's a good point to touch on, because there'll be people looking at this with the mindset of like, maybe ultramarathoning, maybe powerlifting, or maybe bodybuilding isn't for me. That can still manifest itself in a positive way in different arenas outside of the fitness
Do you
community.
know what I'm battling right now, and each of you is going to battle it too, because what sports did we choose? Intentionally, we chose individual sports.
Yeah.
And now we're trying to play a team sport in business, and that's a whole different game, man. I grew up, I wasn't very good at team sports, man. I said, sit the fuck down. I'll do it myself.
Yeah.
That was always my attitude. Like,
That would be a whole
I got
other
this.
long topic.
Well, I was a goalie, so every time I lost, it was my fault. And
Sure.
every time I won, it was never because of me.
Right.
So now
funny
it's
how that
like
happens,
when that
right?
bar comes off the ground,
It's only you.
it's only
me versus me, man.
I want all the pats on the back.
Yeah.
I want all the player of the games. I want all of that. And it's just, it's tough. But making that transfer back into.
Yeah, it's a huge learning opportunity for me, because like since I was 6, I was always the captain of the team, but not because I was a team player, because I was the best. And I would literally tell guys, hey man, just chill out. You can grab a seat. I got this. And they'd be like, oh, I'm on the team. So I'm learning how to do that with business now, right? It's like trying to learn to empower people. It's a whole new different skill to learn how to acquire that, kind of a side.
Yeah, and
side
sometimes
note,
it can go too far, but that's a different topic entirely.
Yeah, we shared that one too. Yeah, for sure, man. But it's all new skill acquisition, right? I see it. It's like, oh, this is an opportunity for me to become better at that. Like maybe I wish I was a better team player when I was growing up, so that now I could be a better businessman. But I wasn't, so that now it's my greatest opportunity to learn how to bring this team and delegate and trust that people are going to get a really good job, a really good result.
I love your facial expressions and your hand motions when he talks about trying to control other people in the same way he can control his own variables. It's hard to put that passion onto someone else.
Yeah.
Right? When it's like.
Trust, man.
It is to be accepting of others' failures and understanding those as learning opportunities for them the way you're as accepting of your own is very, very tough.
Yeah, it's very interesting that people who choose independent sports often become the best coaches, because you can help other people because you've overcome stuff. But when it comes to like team play, that's a whole different ballgame, right? Whole different ballgame.
Yep.
Super interesting, man. I don't know how the time is, but I think that was an awesome conversation about mindset mastery, about why you guys are so awesome and successful. So thank you, man. And we got lots more coming. So you guys know, Alex, Jordan, and I have some things in common. We like to talk about cool stuff. They're much smarter than me, so they're going to be teaching you guys lots of cool stuff about. They're going to be teaching you lots of cool stuff. So Alex is going to teach you guys the integrative approach, how to incorporate all these things. So you guys, if you guys may not know,